Hey guys, it's Anime Wilson here, and this is What If Not Had Paper Release Part 6. One thing before we start the video is I sometimes post questions on, or polls on like how the video should go, and normally I just post them so everyone could vote, but now it's going to be just people who are subscribed to the channel, so if you want to be able to sometimes affect how the story goes, subscribe, and yeah, but that's it. So without further ado, roll the intro. Time skip. 6 hours. Everybody that went on the escort mission returned to the Leaf. They checked in with Izumu and Kotetsu and walked to the base of the Hokage Tower. Kakashi then turned to Naruto and said, "Okay, Naruto, you can go now. The rest of us in the Kazekage will go talk to the Hokage." Naruto nodded and turned towards the Kazekage's children. "Do you need me to show you where your hotel is?" he asked. Temari, the eldest, spoke up. "No thanks, we know where that is." Naruto nodded and started to walk away, when he felt something wrap around him. He glanced down and found that his entire body was wrapped in sand. He followed a small trail of sand leading away from him with his eyes and found that it connected to the gourd on the Kazekage's youngest child. Gaara was her name, Naruto thought, before speaking in a respectful tone. "May I help you?" "You will show me a place to eat," Gaara said in a monotone. "Seafood, specifically." "Okay," Naruto said, slightly confused as to why he was trapped in sand. "Do you have any preferences on what kind of seafood?" Gaara thought for a moment before shaking her head. "Okay, could you please let me go now?" "No, I don't trust you enough not to run away, and I'd rather not have to wander through the streets of Konoha aimlessly looking for a place that sells good seafood." The normal expression on Naruto's face melted away, leaving behind a blank mask. He then dispersed into paper and reformed about 20 feet away from Gaara. He looked back and saw Gaara's siblings were tense, as if slightly scared of something. Gaara in particular. It was almost as if she was going to kill someone. That was how scared they were. Wait, kill someone, Naruto thought. Ah yes, the One Tail is driving her crazy. "The Angler's dock is this way," Naruto said, pointing to his right, or Gaara's left. "You coming?" he said before strolling off. The Angler's dock was probably the only high-class restaurant that Naruto was allowed in. Naruto had saved the owner and his daughter from a very unsavory situation with a group of bandits just outside of Konoha. Since then, the owner had changed his mind about Naruto, as if a demon wouldn't save him, would it? He'd allowed him to eat there whenever he wanted for free. The restaurant was very successful, and even had a few special rooms on the second floor for VIP customers. One of these rooms was reserved specifically for Naruto. Gaara's perspective, 1 hour later. Gaara watched as Naruto walked off. They just spent the last hour eating seafood at the Angler's dock. It was a nice restaurant with really high-class seafood, but that wasn't the main reason Gaara had forced him to eat with her. Now, contrary to popular belief, Gaara didn't spend most of her time killing people. She actually spent a lot of her time in the library, or following her siblings. Kankuro spent most of his time training, or building and updating his puppets. He also spent an inordinate amount of time applying Temari's makeup to his face. Oftentimes, he used his puppets, for part of it, to get perfectly straight lines. When he wasn't doing that, he was trying to interact with girls his age, but unfortunately, Kankuro had almost zero social skills, so he rarely did that either. Temari, on the other hand, actually spent a reasonable amount of time training, about 8 hours a day, and that included doing some sea-rank missions, around or close to Suna. After training, she would usually go on a date with a random boy. It didn't usually last long, and more often than not, it was just a date. Temari was more focused on training. Sometimes, during observing her sister, Gaara saw Temari laugh at something her date said, and more often than not, Temari actually looked happy. While Gaara didn't know Temari's exact reason for dating, her reason for wanting to do so was to have a best friend. Currently, Gaara didn't even need to use any fingers to count how many friends she had, which was another way to say 0. Even though Gaara was going to get her seal fixed, there would still be a chance that the Shikaku could become enraged enough to break free on the full moon. So, whoever she ended up with as a friend or possibly being married to, they had to be able to subdue the Shikaku if it went on a rampage. Gaara formed a half-ram hand seal and body flickered back to the apartment that her and her family were staying at. She walked into the living room and dropped her gourd. A shiver ran through her as she stared out the window and saw the full moon rising. The Shikaku was getting ramped up. She turned her head towards the bedroom doors as it opened, and Temari walked into the living room. "Hey Gaara, how was lunch?" Temari asked tentatively. "It was okay," Gaara said, still looking at the moon rising in the sky as the sun went down. "Temari, I think I may have found someone. Someone like the people who make you laugh on your dates." Hearing this, Temari blushed. But emboldened by her sister's seemingly complacent nature currently, she asked the question. "What do you mean?" Temari asked. "I wanted a friend. Someone that can relate to me," Gaara said, turning towards Temari. "That boy that was with us earlier. Naruto. He's like me. He holds a burden, almost identical to mine. But in order for him to be a viable option, he has to be able to subdue the Shikaku, while the Shikaku is in control of me. Tonight, the Shikaku is going to try and gain control of me, and I won't stop it. It will be up to him to stop the one-tailed rampage. If he survives, then he's worthy of being my friend. If not, then he will simply be a stain on the floor." Temari looked slightly alarmed. Gaara, But before she could say anything else, a wave of sand crashed into her, wrapping around her and cutting off all her movement. Then, before she could say anything else, a handful of sand plastered itself to her mouth and hardened, preventing her from saying anything. "I'm sorry, Temari," Gaara said, "but I can't have you messing this up." Gaara then levitated Temari into her room and placed her on the floor. She then walked out and disappeared in a body flicker. Multiple hours later, 9 p.m. Gaara waited until it was fully dark before tracking Naruto's signature to a library in the center of Konoha. She found him in the shinobi section looking at fire and ninjutsu. He didn't notice her until it was too late. She was close enough to touch him, but as soon as she placed her hand on his shoulder, she body flickered away with him. Naruto's perspective. Someone had just grabbed onto his shoulder and he suddenly found himself in a different place. He recognized it after about a second. Training Ground 76, Naruto thought. One of the training grounds furthest away from Konoha. "Naruto Uzumaki," a voice said, and Naruto whipped around to find Gaara standing there. But something wasn't right. Her voice was too grating, too high-pitched and whiny, and then it clicked as she lifted up her face and looked him in the eyes. Her eyes were now a sandy yellow, Her eyes were now a sandy yellow color, with a 4-pointed star in the middle, and 4 small circles around the star. "Ah," Naruto said. "The Shikaku." He slowly slipped an emergency suppression tag into his hand. While it wasn't powerful enough to fully suppress the Shikaku, it was powerful enough to limit its power. It could probably limit it to a partial transformed state. My container thinks you are powerful enough to stop me whenever I go on a rampage, and I think you're just a little brat. The only person that was able to subdue me was the Kazekage, the one-tailed said in his nasally voice. "Well then I guess we'll have to find out," Naruto said, quickly slapping the suppression tag onto Gaara's forehead before jumping back. "Let's dance, One-Tails," Naruto said before charging forward. "You better not lose this, brat," the Kyuubi growled within Naruto's mind. Yeah, I got it," he said, ducking underneath a punch from the Shikaku. With Temari. For the past couple of hours, Temari had been trying to get free of the sand Gaara had trapped her in, and only just now had she managed to. She rushed into the living room where Kankuro was playing with his puppets. "We need to find Dad," Temari said frantically. "Gaara's not planning on holding the Shikaku's back today, and worse, she's going to be right next to that kid Naruto when she goes on a rampage." Kankuro's eyes widened before he dropped what he was doing and grabbed his working puppet before running out the door. Time skip 20 minutes later. Raza, Hiruzen, Kakashi, Kankuro, Temari, and Jiraiya arrived at Training Ground 76. Jiraiya had just arrived 15 minutes before, and had immediately met up with Hiruzen, which led him to accompany them to Training Ground 76. He'd been away from the village, and he only just checked in, so he planned to do Gaara's seal tomorrow, but if she was going to go on a rampage, then they would need all the help they could get. When they arrived at Training Ground 76, they found a rather peculiar sight. Naruto and Gaara were lying on the ground 6 feet apart from each other. Both were unconscious. Gaara was wrapped in a paper cocoon with seals all over the pieces of paper, and Naruto was wrapped in a sand cocoon. It looked like Gaara had been in her rampage and tried to kill Naruto with the sand coffin, but Naruto, just before he had been crushed, managed to knock her out, but not before he too fell unconscious. Well, this was interesting, Jiraiya said, voicing everybody's thoughts. Anyway guys, thanks for listening, I'll see you all next time. Bye.